Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Drone Life News. There is a lot of news going on this week as the FAA has actually and finally launched the new recreational pilot test, changing the game for drone pilots across the United States. Miriam, welcome to the show, and what do you have for us today?
Thanks for having me, Paul, as usual. And, first up is, as you said, the FAA Trust program. So for anyone who doesn't know exactly what that is, in 2018 FAA reauthorization package, which is the piece of law that actually funds the FAA for the next period of time, it's mostly actually a tax package, and it says we're going to allocate these taxes to the FAA. Congress tends to make requirements in there when they write these authorization packages. And one of the requirements in the 2018 FAA reauthorization package was the requirement that the FAA develop a test for recreational drone operators. And the FAA sort of polled the industry, tried to get opinions on this. They came up with the ideas that it should be free, it should be offered online, and it should be something that is not like a driver's license or a Part 107 license, which is really challenging to get. The goal is really to inform recreational pilots of the basic safety requirements and give them the resources so they know where to go, they know how to get more help, how to improve their flight, and that there are drone regulations and where to find them. And this week, big news, they actually launched the program and introduced the partners, and DroneUp, one of the big partners listed, one of only 16, really a mix of people. We had, you guys as the drone training programs. We had community colleges, the Boy Scouts of America, the AMA is offering. So it's launched, it's up, and you were saying in pre-show, you've definitely got people taking it. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, it's actually fascinating, Miriam, just how many people are taking this test, as we're averaging almost 300 new pilots per day, which I have to say, I'm pretty surprised by that response. And it's going to be interesting to see how the trend evolves over time. Is this just the start? Are things going to get a lot better? Are we going to see some fall off? It's going to be really interesting. But overall, macro, it seems to be going very well, Miriam. And I'm actually kind of surprised at just how many people are taking that test.
Me too. Actually, I find that number incredibly encouraging, because to me what that means is, we were concerned about, okay, you've launched the test, we have the test out there. How are we going to let these recreational pilots know that this test exists? I'm doing my part, but anybody who's reading a magazine called Drone Life already knows that there are drone regulations out there. You're DroneUp. Anybody working with you knows that there are drone regulations out there. But I think that this really demonstrates that the FAA has done a great job with their initial push. They really are getting the word out there. And also, what's encouraging to me is that there's an appetite for it. I think that recreational flyers, nobody wants to spend $1,000 or more than $1,000 on a piece of new equipment and not know how to use it. They want to know how to use it. They want to know how to be legal. They want to know how to use it efficiently. Nobody wants to get in trouble. Where can you fly? Where can't you fly? So I think there's actually appetite for the test too, which is also very encouraging.
Yeah, very positive for the industry. And as you just mentioned, in our next piece of news, it seems like the drones that we're buying and the price point that you mentioned, Miriam, well, it seems to be changing, as DJI still seems to be the powerhouse manufacturer across the United States. But it looks like, Miriam, there are some other manufacturers who are really making some progress and taking away market share from DJI. What's going on here?
Well, this was a great article. Actually, I found this very interesting. I got this piece of news over from Skywatch AI, and Skywatch AI is an insurtech company based out of Israel. Actually, a brilliant team. I've had the opportunity to meet those guys. Really, really smart people. And they're drone insurance providers. So the great thing about data that comes from them is that they have no fox in the hunt, so to speak. They don't have any particular company that they're rooting for. They have no particular region or vertical that they're focused on. It's anybody who purchased drone insurance. So anybody who purchases drone insurance says what type of aircraft they fly. And Skywatch took that data and said, hey, how has that data changed over the last few years? And what they found is that DJI absolutely has the giant share. I mean, still very much so, undeniably the dominant aircraft in the market. But what we are seeing sort of grow in percentages is sort of three categories. So Autel was making some very big strides from, several percentage points every year. Skydio has appeared on the graph, only a very small percentage, but they have appeared on the graph. But the part that's sort of taking the biggest market share, up to sort of 10%, is the other category. And what I think is really interesting about that is that what I'm seeing from my perspective is a lot of new purpose-built manufacturers. And this is as drone technology matures, you get better sensors, you get better software, you get better machine learning, that drones are able to offer a high return on investment for very specific verticals. Cell phone tower industry, wind turbine inspection, specific construction applications. And for those applications where you have a really high return on investment, people are willing to invest in a specialty aircraft. So even if those manufacturers don't have the volume necessarily that a DJI has, or a more consumer-oriented or prosumer-oriented drone like the DJI or the Autel, those manufacturers are seeing real growth in specific verticals that heretofore have not necessarily, been willing to kind of go out and buy a fleet of drones. So they're doing more than just imagery. They're doing more than just standard inspections. They're using sensors that can get them sort of engineering grade data, and they're using them in very specific ways.
Do you believe that Autel kind of taking over a majority of the market share comparative to other manufacturers, do you think that that is a factor of the fact that you go from flying DJI to flying Autel? The app is very similar. It's a very easy transition to just take off and fly with an Autel, as they've made it so convenient and easy to participate? Or do you think that maybe this is a factor of the variety of aircraft that Autel offers? As they have the Dragonfish, $120,000 fixed wing drone. They have an Autel Evo 2 Dual, which is, comparative to the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual, offers a whole lot. The price is, if I understand it, a little bit more, which makes sense if you look at market share comparative DJI, again, and Autel. So when it comes to this big increase in taking over market share from DJI, what do you think that the macro variables might be that are leading up to Autel, of all people, taking more market share than other manufacturers?
I think that you are absolutely right with it being something familiar. I think that really does help. People are reluctant to switch from an iPhone to an Android because they don't want nobody wants the learning curve. It's just a difficult thing. So as much as you can reduce that learning curve, I think people prefer it. You don't want something completely different. I think being in the same relative price point is also a contributing factor. I think if you go much outside of the kind of price point that most people are comfortable in, you're going to have to show something really different for that. And And, when the Evo first came out, I remember one review said, is this the Mavic killer? And of course, it hasn't been the Mavic killer. It's not a Mavic killer. The Mavic is still absolutely dominant in the market. But it was definitely something that offered many of the features that made the Mavic unique, plus some other ones that make the Evo unique. So, I think that Autel's in a really interesting position right now. They're a Chinese company. They have a manufacturing plant based in Bothell, Washington. They're really trying to kind of tick security boxes. They do have one of their products is made in the USA, according to U.S. Customs and Excise, and they went through a long process to get that established. So I'm really interested to see what happens from here. As I said, DJI is still absolutely dominant in the commercial industry. There's no argument about that. And I think they'll continue for a long time. They have a head start. They have had a lot of development. They have a huge client base, which allows them sort of instant turnaround on fixes and updates and tweaks and so forth. But I think some of the other manufacturers are gaining in maturity now, and we'll start seeing some.
Yeah, and I think Autel has definitely taken on a lot of powerful players from other companies to build their team. And we all know that a company's success is highly prevalent on the team that they have. So congrats to everyone who's now over at Autel. You know who you are. Congrats. But that one question that I have, the last question regarding this particular subject is, in the past year, maybe two, maybe longer, there have been so many questions regarding the security of DJI drones. And as we just reported last week, DoD had cleared some DJI drones. So do you think that this trend of DJI losing market share will continue, or do you think it might actually slow down because of kind of a title change?
No, I don't honestly think that the security concerns got a lot of press. I mean, they really did. They got a tremendous amount of press. And in a way, I sort of felt that was unfortunate because it might have been a little bit overstated. It wasn't very specific, and it might have been a little overstated. But I don't actually think that's why we're seeing a market shift. I think we're just seeing a market shift because of time, because other manufacturers are gaining in maturity, and the drone industry is maturing, and so you're getting kind of other players with different things to offer. The DoD report, really, it was a great report for DJI because it did sort of vindicate what they'd been saying, that, there just aren't these cyber vulnerabilities. It was referring, just to clarify, to the government editions. So we should clarify that it was talking specifically about DJI's government edition drones. So
I think that is an important factor, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with this market share here in the future. And great job to Skywatch for putting out that data. I think that really helps everyone. And, we've had Brandon Packman on the show before to kind of talk about the benefits of Skywatch. And Miriam, I will be honest with you, I use Skywatch myself, not only here at DroneUp, but for my quote-unquote drone side hustle that I still do.
Okay, we are not sponsored by Skywatch, just so everybody knows. I'm not sponsored by Skywatch. He's not sponsored by Skywatch.
No, but I do use their product, and I like their product a lot, and I've chosen to use it. So yeah, anyway. But that brings us to our next story for today. As we discussed last week, the FAA is developing the BVLOS ARC. This way they can better understand the regulatory framework to utilize for beyond visual line of sight flights. Yet, as we had discussed last week as well, one particular company is really taking a very different approach when it comes to these BVLOS operations. So as you had just mentioned, Miriam, about the importance of diversity and perspectives when it comes to the regulatory framework, who is this company and why is this beneficial to the future of drones, because again, the societal impacts here are going to be quite large when it comes to BVLOS flights, because for everyone, if you're not, kind of taking on the hints, we're talking about BVLOS is really going to be your drone delivery, your package delivery, your Panda Express at 10:30 p.m. at night via drone delivery. So, Miriam, what's going on?
So this was another mention of DroneUp. So DroneUp, as we discussed on the show before, got the Walmart investment, was named as Walmart's delivery partner. So Walmart has announced that they will be starting residential drone delivery from their stores, starting with a store in Arkansas near their founding store, I guess it is, their original store. And so DroneUp was just named to the BVLOS ARC. And that's really interesting because it kind of shows, now, back in 2015, I wrote an article about the amount of money that Amazon was spending on lobbying and so forth. And Walmart, we haven't seen take a sort of big visible spot on the table. And they're still not taking a big visible spot on the table. But what they're saying is we want our drone partners. Their drone partners are taking a spot on the table. And as the drone partners of one of the largest retailers world, it's a significant place in the commercial drone industry right now. So that's interesting. And I think the other thing that we need to think about when we think about the BVLOS ARC is, what does BVLOS mean? So now you just mentioned, that it's your Panda Express at 10:30 at night. And yes, let's hope so. But it's also, BVLOS has such a wide variety of applications because, you look at somebody like Brink Drones. You and I were talking about that earlier. Brink Drones is designed specifically for SWAT teams, public safety, and so forth. For them, a BVLOS operation could be, 3 feet away around the back of the building or something like that. It could be going in a back door or around a shed or something like that where your line of sight is limited, but it isn't because of distance. BVLOS can also be cargo drones. So when you're talking about like real heavy duty, long distance, 100-mile deliveries out in Alaska on the pipeline, that's a very different thing than a residential drone delivery less than 10 miles away. And I think the other thing that the FAA is thinking about, and they've mentioned this several times, is that BVLOS is really a precursor to UAM. So Panda Express first and drone taxi next. Like this is going in this direction. And so they're going to need a wide variety of players on the ARC to kind of cover all of those areas of interest. But I think naming DroneUp was an interesting development. It says, hey, residential drone delivery front and center. Here we go.
One of the pushbacks that I've heard about regarding the DAC, the Drone Advisory Committee, is how the FAA has repeatedly kind of ignored some major advice and provisions that were later accepted vis-a-vis comments on public announcements of regulation. Do you think that the BVLOS ARC will actually have the ear of the FAA and be able to really make progress? Because I know you and I have heard various stories from various sides of the aisle regarding the effectiveness of these ARC committees. So, I mean, what do you think that we'll see? Will we see a repeat of the pattern, or you think that this issue is just way too big when it comes to the impact on society, the impact on drone pilots, both hobby, commercial, even enterprise? I mean, what do you think that we're going to see here?
I think, it's a very complex environment that the FAA is navigating. And I'm a neutral party. I'm just an observer. I'm not an FAA apologist or anything, but I do think that it's important to sort of take into consideration the complexities of what they're doing. So I think when you have the DAC and you say the DAC provides input, that's one source of input to inform a regulation. Then you have the defense community. That's another stakeholder contributing to inform that regulation. Then you have, governmental, and you have state and local authorities, also stakeholders who want to have input on that regulation. So, the FAA is in the position of having to balance a lot of stakeholders that may not all have exactly the same goal. And so given that, I don't think that it's surprising necessarily that everything that the industry recommends is not immediately not directly adopted. So I do think the industry groups do tremendous work. They work very hard. It's very challenging to get people from all different areas of the industry to collaborate together to come to consensus on things. So I'm sure that it's very frustrating when you've worked really hard for months and come to a consensus and then somebody says, yeah, nah, we're not doing that. But at the same time, I do think that you have to take sort of the broader view and understand that the FAA is juggling sort of many different stakeholders, and industry groups are one source of information, kind of informing those regulations. So I think when you're talking about new things like BVLOS flight, to my mind, it's like any other government agency. When you're talking about the FDA, like I want doctors on the Federal Drug Administration able to say this interacts with that and this is, has these side effects or something, right? You need the experts there to inform regulators of how things are going to interact. And I think you need industry there who are actually out there flying drones to inform regulators about how things are going to work together in a very practical day-to-day operation. So those industry groups, I think, are critical to developing reasonable rules,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Miriam. In all honesty, I feel that the need for practical drone experience is really going to help pave the way for understanding the impacts and the potential consequences, right? That experience in variety of environments is really going to paint a picture of what really will happen, which again just showcases, the importance that actual drone pilots who are doing these operations are a part of these committees, right? I mean, it's so critical. And to your point regarding the broadening perspective of the FAA and how they're trying to get all these industry groups together, that's on top of all of the kind of temporary and transitory issues that are going on with the FAA right now in regards to the issues with passengers on commercial airliners. When the FAA has issued, more fines like pretty much in history this year. And, so they have all of these outside factors kind of coming down right now, right? Let's take the Boeing 737 MAX issue, right? Let's talk about how the FAA just pushed the 777X certification to 2023. I mean, there are so many large, enormous issues going on at the FAA, which, by the way, I am not apologizing for the FAA either, but I think that we're all human. And so I just think that, like you said, it's a complex environment, but also as a macro kind of outside looking in, it seems like there's a lot going on over there right now.
Not to mention a global pandemic, right? I mean, come on, and that affected the airline industry. That affected air travel. That caused some problems. So yeah, everyone I have ever spoken with at the FAA, I can say this without exception. Anyone I've had a personal conversation with at the FAA has been amazing and has tried really, really hard. But as I said, I think that industry groups, incredibly valuable, can't do without them, but they're one point of data among many.
Definitely, definitely. Well, Miriam, thank you again for updating us on all these stories hitting the tape this week. It's very interesting. It seems like this year we're kind of making a little bit, we have a little bit more velocity of progress, it seems.
I think absolutely. I'm really excited about this year. And A few years back, I was in Germany at Intergeo, and I heard Kay Wackwitz of DroneUp. He's a Drone Industry Insight. They're a European industry research group. And he said, he was talking about drone investment, and he said, we've sort of gone Gardner hype cycle, we've gone past sort of unrealistic optimism, and then we're in the trough of despair. But that is followed by the plateau of productivity. And I really think that what I'm seeing now is the plateau of productivity, where we've got our stuff together now in the drone industry. We're really delivering value. People can't say, oh, you're a solution in search of a problem anymore. The drone industry is delivering serious return on investment, competitive advantage, safety advantage. So I'm very optimistic. I think it is all kind of coming together for us.
I could not agree more, Miriam. And on that non-bombshell, that's going to do it for us today. Miriam, thank you again. Do appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Paul. Talk to you next week.
Sounds good. And that's going to do it for us, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another edition of Drone Life News. Let us know what you think. Leave us a review and leave us a comment wherever you watch this show, whether it's on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify. We greatly appreciate that. But that's going to do it. We'll see you next time.